Hello and welcome to Mystic Visions. This is a daily reading for January the 10th, 2021. And the purpose of this reading is to give you a brief piece of advice or help guide your overall focus for the day. If you're looking for a more general reading, please check out my channel. I have monthly readings for each sign that are a little bit more broad. So if you've never done this before, the way that you'll do this is you'll choose one of the three piles that I have here and scroll down to the description and find the timestamp for your pile. And when you click on that timestamp, it will fast forward in the video to your individualized reading. So I've also added three crystals here to help you decide. And the first one is Tiger Eye. And then for pile 2, I have Selenite. And for pile 3, this is Sodalite. Okay, so to start off with, I'm just going to give you about 30 seconds of silence to make your selection before we go ahead and move on. You can meditate if you wish. Also keep in mind you can pick more than one pile. That's fine. Follow your intuition. There's probably some good advice in each pile, but one's maybe more specific. So let's start the 30 seconds now. Okay, so if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and make your choice and scroll down to the description to find the timestamp for your particular reading. So we're going to get started. And I'm going to start off with pile 1. If you chose the Tiger Eye, this will be for you. Let me move these up so we can have a little space here. So you have Judgment, the King of Cups, and the Seven of Cups in the reverse. Okay? Alright, so Judgment can typically mean that you're in a situation that calls for you not only to follow your head, not only to have logic and reasoning informing your decision, but to also look back at how things have worked in the past. So, you know, a lot of times, the Justice card is a little bit more of just straight up logic, where you can say, okay, well, how does this situation work out, like, mathematically? Should I buy a lottery ticket because there is the ability to make millions of dollars and it only takes a $10 investment or something like that, so you're like looking at it logically like that. But then when you bring it to the level of judgment, what happens is you say, well, I know that there is a good chance there, but in my experience, it's never worked out. I've lost a lot of money doing that. So Judgment brings that sort of wisdom that comes with your pure past experience, because it's easy to look at things from a logical perspective, but the logic does not always translate perfectly into your personal life. So sometimes Judgment is important in that way, in basically incorporating your experience into what has happened. And it's also just kind of a thing where we get idealistic about fairness, about these ideas of equity and fairness and things like that, especially when we're younger, and we try to strive for those systems of fairness and ideologies and all like that kind of thing. And it's a wonderful thing, and everybody, I tend to think everybody experiences that to some degree. But when that starts to mature, you start to recognize that you yourself have to have a little bit of judgment and pick and choose your battles and the idea is that you can't fill from an empty cup. And so you have to take care of yourself as well, and you begin to, not think of things in quite such stringent justice terms, and you're moving on into this more judgment space. It also has an era of completion, completion. So this can mean that you've been working on something for a while, and you're at a point where you're ready for it to just be done. You're ready for it to be judged. You're ready for it to move on from this, to let it go. And that's always a somewhat liberating state of mind, where you're kind of just like letting the old pass away and you're on to something new, right? It can also be a time where old things are kind of called up, but almost in more of like a nostalgic way. So this is like a recap of what's going on. So you may be a little bit reflective about what got you to this place, or how you did, looking back with judgment. But all in all, it's a pretty good place to be. You're moving on to a sort of higher level of existence here. Now, the crossing energy here is the King of Cups. And the King of Cups is somebody who's normally I kind of view this person almost as like a guru or a spiritual leader a lot of times. They are not so outgoing all the time, but what it is, because that's like a charlatan, right? You have some like cult leader types, and that is not at all what like a true spiritual leader looks like in my experience. Those people are generally trying to make a lot of money, right? It's more like a sales pitch. But a true spiritual leader is a lot of times somebody who does not advertise himself whatsoever. This is somebody who, you never even really knew that this person was some sort of like a spiritual authority until you really get to talking to them. And a lot of times they're the type of people that they're not quite so extroverted. They're not throwing themselves out there. They're not out for fame or anything like that. But when you do open up to them, they're a very warm individual. They're very inviting. But they're not vying for your attention in any way. They're very confident in their own emotions and everything, and they're willing to help you out. They're a shoulder to cry on. But this is sort of in the crossing or influencing place. This is either a person who is like in your focus, somebody who's on your mind, or you are sort of being asked to take on this type of energy, that there is a situation around you in which you need to be that sort of guidance or that spiritual friend to help somebody out. It can also mean that you need that you need to seek this person out, to seek out this sort of mentor to help you regulate these possibly tumultuous emotional experiences that you're having. So here, this guy is sort of floating in the middle of the ocean on a box, and if you find yourself in that state, it might be somewhat easy to panic, but he's not panicked. He's calm, cool, and collected. He acts like he's just fine, right? So this is, in some way or another, the challenge for the day is to either be that person for somebody else or to kind of seek that particular energy out to kind of get you through this, right? Now your advice card, you have the Seven of Cups in the reverse. So the Seven of Cups tends to be about making a choice. A lot of times what's happening is there are a lot of people coming at you with all kinds of options, and they're sometimes trying to sell you on this. There's not really a good choice in this situation, because you wouldn't naturally be necessarily led to make this choice on your own. You might not seek these things out, but when you have people who are like throwing things in your face and saying like, look, get this, buy this will make you happy, this is wonderful, They're kind of trying to fool you. And your advice here is to resist that, resist this process of being led by others, or like falling into these traps or sales pitches, and to probably turn your focus a little bit more toward your emotional health or your emotional well-being. So if there is some sort of a situation here where your emotions are running a little awry, or things are not exactly calm under the surface, going out and spending money or something like that is a band-aid. And I know this from personal experience. My mother, for example, was taught by her grandmother a bad habit of, whenever you're feeling sort of emotionally challenged or upset, to go out and go shopping. And so it's better than, a lot of people's affectations like drugs or things like that, but at the same time it's not a good way to save money either. So it has its own problems, but she has at the very least managed to turn that into an opportunity to gift people with all kinds of stuff. So so there are more productive ways to deal with your emotions, to kind of turn inward and figure out what's going on under the surface, rather than to seek some sort of external solution to your issues, to your problems. So that's about it for card number 1. So we're going to go ahead and move on to card number 2. Card number 2, if you chose selenite, this one is for you. Alright, I have the 9 of Swords, the 4 of Wands, and the 5 of Swords in the reverse. Okay, so 9 of Swords, to me, very, very strongly indicates like some nervousness, or some possibly anxiety, or just worry, right? There could be some protectiveness about this. There's some, before you go to bed at night, you're thinking about all the things that you got to do that could go wrong. And it has a way of sort of interfering with a more restful state of mind. And the thing about this isn't just fear itself. This isn't just like being afraid that some bad thing is going to happen. What happens is your mind in this state sort of, you're priming it to be in this state of thinking about what could go wrong instead of thinking about what could go right. And from a sort of like energetic perspective, that's a little dangerous to do, because if you follow the law of attraction, it's like whatever you're focused on, you're priming your subconscious to basically manifest that reality around you. And I kind of view the law of attraction in a very utilitarian sort of way, in a mechanical sort of way, almost scientifically, where you have your conscious mind, but your conscious mind is not the totality of what you are. In fact, it's almost nothing. People call it the ego, right? It's almost just this thinnest little layer of your brain, of your mind. And it's really an illusion. It's not the entirety of what you are, because the entirety of what you are is, based on all of the infinite connections that you have with the universe, the chemical makeup of your body, the amount of blood going through your veins. You are a product of every single experience that's ever occurred in your life. So this idea that you have of yourself, you say, well, I'm Dr. Shiny. That idea is really kind of an idea among ideas. It's not the real you, but we tend to confuse ourselves and think of ourselves as just that idea. So what goes on here is, if you're constantly thinking about the things that you're worried about, it's your conscious mind talking to your subconscious mind. And the subconscious, it'll direct your attention. It'll affect how accurately you do your work, or how focused you are, how in the moment you are. And so if you're, for example, if you're at work and you're worrying about how you're going to pay your bills or something like that, then you're worry is going to interfere with the quality of your work. And if you're interfering with the quality of your work, you're putting your livelihood and your pay at jeopardy even more. Whereas if you were fully focused on what you were doing, the quality of your work would improve, and you may be subject to raises, or people might appreciate what you're doing a little bit more because it might be more accurate. So the idea here with this card is not to let these worries interfere with good processes in your life or in the work that you're doing. You don't want to stay up losing sleep over what you're worried about, because you're going to wake up tired the next day and less prepared to deal with what's going on or what's coming. So and then, the really dangerous thing about this is that it can somewhat get into a feedback loop where once you recognize that worrying is not helping, then you start to worry because you're worried. And you start to feel as though, it's a very bad thing for you to be worrying. So, if you get into that little head trap, if you don't have skill with meditation, for example, then allow yourself to feel the way that you do, and that kind of makes it feel a little bit better. It's almost a paradox where you say, well, I'm nervous. Well, that's okay. Be nervous. Allow yourself to be nervous. That's fine. And you almost surprisingly feel a little bit of relief in that. But the ultimate goal would be to practice some meditation, which is just really the art of letting go of the mind and the worries and things like that. And just sort of letting the water settle when it's all sloshing around, letting the thoughts and the mind settle. And that's very necessary for achieving any sort of real rest. So challenging or influencing you here is that Four of Wands. And the Four of Wands represents a happy, healthy home. So challenging you here, I have a little personal formula that I've kind of ascribed to this Four of Wands. So wands represent action, right? And there are 4 wands in this card, and they can represent sort of the 4 walls of a home. But if you think about it, just like a home in general, it's a box, right? I mean, some houses are, of course, more complicated, but on the most basic level, it's a box. It's got 4 walls, And those 4 wands, to me, symbolize the 4 types of action that are required for a happy, healthy home. And I would break that down. The first one is you have to put work into the house, right? You have to put work into cleaning, taking care of your laundry and general maintenance in the house, changing your light bulbs, cooking, that kind of thing. So there's got to be some work that's put into the house. Then there has to be some work that's put outside the house, that you can go to work to earn a paycheck, to pay for your bills or your mortgage or your rent, your electricity bills. You have to go out to the grocery store and obtain things for your house. Or even if you live off-grid, you've got to go outside and obtain food somehow from outside the house and bring it back in. So some work has to go out. The third type of action, I would say, is to actively rest. Okay, the house has to be a place where you can put all of those things down and you can just simply enjoy yourself. Or if not enjoy yourself, you have to at least be able to get a little shut-eye here and there. You have to be able to sleep. You have to be able to rejuvenate yourself, recharge your batteries. And then the fourth pillar here is often overlooked, I think, but I think it's equally as important. This house also, to fulfill you, has to be a sort of platform or jumping off point for some other more long-term goals or effort. There has to be something that you're wanting to do. And maybe it's raising a family. Maybe it's just a place for you to serve as home base while you are working towards some career goal or something like that. But it needs to have that sort of foundation for some long-term goals to be a happy house. Now, look, a lot of people get too hung up on that one particular form of action, and they neglect all the others. The idea here is that all of these things need to exist in a balance for a happy home. So this could be something that's somewhat challenging for you, is to find that sort of balance between what's going on in the house, outside the house, or getting enough rest, or using this as a jumping off point for something else in your life. Now, the advice card for you here is the Five of Swords. Five of Swords in the reverse, actually. So, this, I kind of take this to mean be careful about getting into arguments, or about challenging people on, political or ideological basis. What's really being asked is to think about, in the context of this sort of happy home here, is the argument really worth it, or are you putting your relationships at jeopardy because you are concerned about being right, or having a certain ideological perspective conveyed to other people? So, yeah, this is asking you to sort of be careful about that, resist that. If you are attempting to feel that sort of happy, healthy home energy, you might want to pick and choose your battles, essentially. Ask yourself, is it really that important? So that's about it for card number 2. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to card number 3. And card number 3 is the Sodalite. If you chose this is the reading for you. So you have the Knight of Wands in the reverse, the Chariot in the reverse, and then the Death card for your advice. Okay. Knight of Wands in the reverse is you're feeling maybe a little bit resistant to taking action. Like you're, at the worst, this could be a little bit of laziness. But it's not necessarily, that's kind of a strong word, right? So it's not necessarily straight up laziness. There is a hesitation to act here, in more general terms. There's a decision to be made, there's something to be done, and you're like, I don't know about this. You are pulling back the reins on the situation. You are not jumping in, would be just a more general way to put it. It can indicate, laziness, but this is a daily reading, so I don't want to interpret it in a way that kind of ascribes a characteristic to your personality in a broad way in this context. To me, this is more of, there is something going on today that there's a call to action, and you are hesitant about it. You are kind of not wanting to move forward. Crossing you is this Chariot in the reverse, and that Chariot, typically when it's in the upright position, it's kind of about accomplishment and moving on from sort of a mastery of your home environment, or I kind of think of it as like graduating high school and moving on to something else. Bigger and better horizons. But in this context, with it in the reverse, there's, again, a somewhat similar to the last card, a little bit of a resistance to that. So you may be comfortable where you are. You may be thinking that it's great, it's fine, everything is, happy, not wanting to kind of grow up a little Peter Pan syndrome going on here, and very understandable, right? Things are great for a kid, and if you're a person who has managed to appreciate the state that you are in, it's so rare that people do that. People are always chasing after other things. It may be very hard for you to be on board for moving on to a different situation in your life. And I know how you feel, because I'm about to move on to a different situation in my life. And I am very happy with where I am. But I have faith that I will also be very happy with where I'm going. And I'm open to the change, right? So, this is what this card is about, is that there is a time to sort of move on. And it's not always comfortable. It's not always preferable. But it is definitely necessary. If you're not moving, you're not growing, right? And the advice card is the Death card. And for your advice, what the Death card really means is a rebirth, and it fits very much in with the theme. All three of these cards are extremely similar in their meaning, because with the Death card, it's not necessarily talking about like a physical death. A lot of people get freaked out by this card. It doesn't necessarily mean that like somebody's going to die or something like that. It can, of course, but the vast majority of the time, this is referring to how whenever you hold some sort of belief system or something like that, changing your mind can sometimes feel like dying, like an old you is dying and a new you is born, because it's not as simple as all of these beliefs that we have are sort of modular, where you can just take one out and put another one in. It doesn't quite work like that. The entire psyche is held together as a pattern that emerges out of all these beliefs. So it's like every belief sort of informs all the other beliefs. And when you change one little aspect of your belief system, then everything else in that belief system is altered in at least some small way. Now, occasionally you run into something where you change something and it's like almost like you don't even recognize where you are anymore. There's like a giant change. People talk about things like the dark night of the soul. This is kind of what I think the dark night of the soul is referring to, where a very, very core aspect of your mentality is altered and your entire viewpoint is now almost foreign. And you get no sense of sort of comfort with it. Something we all take for granted is that a lot of us on a daily basis, we have this feeling of familiarity with our reality, with the way the world is around us. There's this, even if we don't like it, even if we're constantly fighting to make it better or more equitable or whatever, we have a bit of familiarity with it or comfort with it. We feel like it's business as usual. And when you're thrown out of that comfort zone, even if it's for the better, a lot of times it can create unusual and unexpected anxieties, because it's like you're not used to that. You become accustomed to whatever. Think about Stockholm Syndrome, where people fall in love with the people who are imprisoning them or oppressing them. So this is really just a matter of the way your brain works. Is it attempts to normalize its emotional state within whatever environment it is present in. So the Death card refers to a time when you're being asked to sort of change those paradigms in such a way that you become a new individual. You're reborn from the ashes. You are having to move out of this limited perspective into a broader perspective, and it oftentimes is not comfortable. It's something that you have to kind of develop a taste for over your life, and you'll have to as you age, regardless. But it's very easy to, for the first 20 or 30 years of your life, to sort of put all that off and to remain in this more adolescent mindset. And some of us have gone through traumas which have kind of accelerated the process, but others of us have been, I guess, fortunate enough not to. On the other hand, going through those things has a way of imparting wisdom. So who knows? Different strokes for different folks. But this is given to you as your advice. So what this is saying is to become a little bit more comfortable with these transitions. And the way to do that is to recognize, first of all, that they are inevitable. So if you're resisting them, it's kind of like trying to make yourself all tense in a rough situation, right? Where if you make yourself tense, you're more likely to break a bone or something. Whereas if you're, jumping out of a rail car, you tuck and roll and you stay loose and you're protecting yourself a little bit more from injury. So being able to adapt is very important, and this is what's being asked of you here. So it's not as though the situation that you're leaving is going to, or that the situation you're going to is going to be awful compared to what you came from. It's kind of up to you to make it what you want it to be, but you do have to realize that there are times where you have to leave the past behind. And so that's what your advice is for this today. Okay, so that went awfully long today, but I enjoyed it very much. And please let me know what you thought in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again for the next daily reading.